Hi Stefan! Today I was going to do a December wrap-up, but since I couldn't quite put my finger on whether I'd read a few books in November or December, I decided I'd rather do a book review of a book that I got for Christmas. The book that I'll be talking about was actually given to me by my granddad, and it's called The Selection, and it's by Kiera Cass and looks like this. Now the cover is very, very pretty. It's all blue basically, and for some reason I really like blue books. I don't know why. But the cover also screams romance and YA, which is not something I would usually read. I prefer more classic novels or thoughtful novels, and not so much like romantic things. But since my granddad gave this to me, I thought I should give it a shot. Also, I'll try to make this review as spoiler-free as possible, but if I should leak some spoilers here and there, I'll make sure to warn you beforehand. I'm just going to quickly summarize what happens in this book, and it basically says, up there, it says 35 Girls, 1 Crown, the competition of a lifetime. The story basically takes place in a fictional country that is nonetheless very similar to our country. Also, the social structure is a bit different to ours. Depending on what social range you're on, you get numbers. For example, the kings are obviously number 1, and then it goes all the way down to number 8, which is basically tramps and people like that. The main character in this book is a class 5, which means she is actually quite poor. And basically what happens is that the prince of that country, who is 18 years old, and he's called Maxon, he needs a wife. And because he lives in a very controlled environment, he has to basically go on a dating trip. So what the royal family decides to do is they invite 35 girls from all over the country, and these 35 girls participate in a selection. In this selection, the prince basically chooses his future wife. And it just so happens that the main character, who's called America Singer, is also one of those selected 35. The thing is, her heart is already elsewhere, but I'm not going to go into detail about that because that would be a spoiler. But basically her situation is that she doesn't actually want to go to the palace. And the book basically just goes on and on to the point where there's only 6 girls left in the selection, and that is where the second book comes in. As you might have noticed, there's not really a kind of big interesting plot. Nonetheless, the book did not get boring at all, even though the only thing we're doing is following America around the castle and watching all the other girls get selected or thrown out, and watch her relationship with the prince. And that's basically it. But nonetheless, I read it in one evening and thought it was actually quite fun to read. So that was the plot overview, and now comes the bit that might be kind of spoilery. So I'll just alert you before that happens. What I noticed about this book, basically the minute I started reading it, is that it kind of resembles The Hunger Games. Obviously it's not as brutal as The Hunger Games, and it's not exactly like it either, but there's just certain elements in this book that strongly remind it of it. So I'll just go through those things. The first thing that reminded me strongly of The Hunger Games was the fact that the society is divided into numbers, which reminded me very much of the district in The Hunger Games. And obviously there's also the competition, where there can only be one winner. Also, the main character in this book is quite poor and doesn't come from a very socially high rank, just like Katniss. Another thing, and this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear this, click away, or pause the video and skip ahead, is that America can't decide between Aspen, who is her ex-boyfriend, and the Prince Maxon. And the same situation is in The Hunger Games, where Katniss can't decide between Gale and Peter. As a conclusion, this book isn't very hard to read. It's not at a very high reading level. There's no really hard words in it or intricate sentences or anything, and like I said, the plot is very simple. Nonetheless, it was a nice change from the books that I usually read. It also had just the right amount of romance in it, but it didn't go as far as like 50 Shades of Grey or something like that, which I wouldn't read because those books are crap, no offense. But yeah, it was nice as just like an in-between thing to read in one evening if you're looking for a bit of a change. So that was my book review of The Selection by Kiera Cass. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye!